Hello, I'm now going to record Daf Kuf Gimel. Before we begin, I just want to go over a machlokes we had yesterday between Rav and Shmuel in three cases. One case was chiseling a stone, the other was making a hole in the chicken coop so that the foul air can get out, and the other was putting a nail so that a handle is tight into the blade of a shovel. Rav said in all three cases you were chayiv for baina, and Shmuel says in all three cases you were chayiv for makeh b'patish. Some Rishonim learned that there's an out-and-out machlokes whether you're chayiv on binyan for kalim. Rav says you're chayiv for baina because there's baina even on utensils, and Shmuel says there can be no baina on utensils, only makeh b'patish when you do the final act of finishing that particular utensil, only on the final act. But according to Rav, there's baina, and baina would be at any part of the making of the utensil. Other Rishonim hold that Shmuel might agree that there's binyan b'kelim, but only if you make the utensil from the beginning until the end. But if all you do is the end of the utensil, then Shmuel holds it's only makeh b'patish. So one of the machlokes we had was making this hole in the chicken coop. According to Rav, it was baina, and according to Shmuel, it was makeh b'patish. So according to Rav, even doing something which is not so significant is also called baina. So Toshima, I'll bring you a raya, hakadech kolshu, if somebody uses an awl to make a perforation, and seemingly that perforation is eventually going to take a peg or a screw, so it says you're chayiv. So Bishlam al Rav holds that anything which is similar to construction, even making a hole into a chicken coop was a construction, so you're also making a hole which afterwards will take a peg or a screw. So mechzi kaman decharchur lebinyano. So this hole looks like you're being bound to something, even though only you made a hole, but eventually there'll be a screw or peg that goes into it, so it's all part of binyan. El Shmuel, since this hole is meant to take a peg or a screw, why are you chayiv? It's certainly not makeh b'patish. So lav gemar malochu, it's not a finishing act. Hacham ma'искina de baze beramtza de parzela. He made the perforation with a long nail, and he leaves the nail inside. The shafke b'gaveh, he leaves it inside because now he's going to use that protruding nail as a hook. Is the heinig gemar malacha, and therefore it is makeh b'patish. Ze'aklal, anytime you do a malacha, the Mishnah says, and the malacha will last. Yesterday we discussed, is it that it lasts for a long time, or just that it lasts over Shabbos? So you're chayiv. Ze'aklal asuyimai. What is ze'aklal coming to add? If there is a block which you can carve out a container or receptacle of a kav, but instead you only carved out 3/4 of the kav, you're still chayiv, because some people will leave it as a 3/4 of a kav, and you finished the keli. It's a makeh b'patish, and something which will last. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Aimer, a makeh b'kornis al asadin, when you bang with a hammer on the base that you work on, is also considered makeh b'patish. My covet, what do you do when you bang with a hammer? Rabbi Rav Yosef Damri Tarvayu Mipnei Shema'amin Es Yodai. He's just practicing his swing. Mos Koshuba Bnei Rachba, the sons of Rachba, asked the kasha, that's Ifa and Avimi. Asked Al Me'ata Choza Umanusa B'Shabsa V'Gomar. If you see, let's say, a craftsman doing work on Shabbos and you're learning how to do it, Hachinami de Mechayiv, are you chayiv? What kind of malacha is it, just practicing or learning how to do something? El Abayev Rav Damri Tarvayu Shekem Merada de Tase Mishkan Eisen came. The people who banged the sheets of gold to make it very thin in the Mishkan needed to make sure that the flat part of their hammer was very smooth, because if it had ridges or grooves, it would tear the thin gold that they were banging on. So in order to smooth the bottom of their hammer, they would bang the hammer on the, stone or whatever it was they were working on, to make sure that the bottom of the hammer is very smooth, that afterwards they can bang on the gold plates. And therefore, banging on the hammer is makeh b'patish, because you're smoothing your hammer. Tanya Namiochi, there's a brayso also, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Aimer, Afa makeh b'kornis al asadin b'shas malacha, when you bang with your hammer on the platform, on the stone base during work, you're chayiv. Shekem merada de tase mishkan oisen kain. The ones who flattened the plates of gold in order to make it thin sheets used to bang their hammers in order to smooth the bottom of their hammers. The Mishnah says a chayrish kolshu, if you plow, you make a tiny hole in the ground, or menachesh, somebody who does weeding, or v'amikarsim, somebody who cuts dry branches from a tree, or hamazoret, somebody who prunes even healthy branches but thins out the branches of a tree. Even a kolshu is chayiv. Hamalaket eitzim, one who gathers wood from a tree or the ground. Im letaken, if he's improving the tree or the ground, he's chayiv on a kol shein. Im lahesik, if it's in order to use it as fuel, then the levashel be'akala. As long as you took enough wood in order to cook a chicken egg, then you're chayiv. Hamalaket asovim, if you're gathering grass. Im letaken, if the purpose of gathering grass is to improve the terrain, the soil, you're chayiv on a kol shu. Im lebehema, if it's to feed an animal, it's kimaloi piagdi, enough for the mouth of a goat which eats grass. What is a tiny hole of plowing useful for? The Gemara answers, Chazi lebizra dekara. You could in that hole put one seed of a cucumber bush. And the kavosa similarly gabi mishkan sheken roi lekelach echad shel samonim. When they wanted to plant a plant which made dye material, if there was a hole in the ground that can take one seed, they would put the seed in and that would give you a plant. And the plant would give you plenty of dye. The idea here is as follows. Even though we said that somebody who carries out seeds, he's only chayiv if he carries out 2 seeds, because no one would carry out less than 2 seeds. Nobody would bother taking out seeds that's less than 2. But let's say once you carry 2 seeds out and there is a seed on the ground, people would take that one seed and plant it in that one hole. So the one hole that you made for charisha is choshev enough to plant a seed in, even though seeds themselves are only choshev when you're mitzi too. Hamanachesh, when you do weeding, v'amakarsem, or cutting a dry wood, or mazare, just pruning, you're chayiv. Tanu Rabbanan, hatoilish ulashin, if you pull out endives, v'hamazare zradim, or you cut sticks, im la'achila, if it's something that you can eat, the shear is, as usual, kigregeris. Food products, the shear is the size of a fig. Im lebehema, if it's for animal food, kimalai piagdi, it's the size of a goat's mouth. Im lahesik, if the purpose is for fuel, k'dei levashel be'akala, enough to cook a small egg. Im liapois sakarka, if pulling it out is going to soften the ground and make the ground more receptible to water, to planting, the shear is a kol shein. So the Gemara asks, Atu kulu loy liapois sakarka ninu? But in all the cases, regardless what you want it for, but the moment you pull out a little bit, you are improving the terrain. So why aren't you always chayiv for terrain improvement even on the kol shu? So Rabbi Rav Yosef Damri Tarvayu, they both say ba'agam shanu, that this halacha was taught in a marsh. In a marsh, you're not improving any terrain. So therefore, if you're pulling the stuff out to eat, it's kigregeris. For behema, it's kimaloi piagdi. If it's for fuel, it's levashal be'akala, and there is no terrain improvement. Abayam Rabbi is afilu teima. You can even say it's speaking besoda the lavagam. It's not a marsh, it's a field. But going to like kamachavim. But your intention was not to improve the terrain. And according to Reb Shimon, Dover Shem is chavin is mutter. But v'abayi v'rav damri tarvayu moidir Reb Shimon b'psikreisha v'layamus. If it's a field, even if it's not, you don't intend to improve the terrain, but it's inevitable that you will improve the terrain. And Reb Shimon is moidir b'psikreisha. Speaking in somebody else's yard. So therefore, what if it's in somebody else's yard? Is a machlokes between the Aruch versus Taisvis and other Rishonim. The Aruch holds that if it's Eina Mischaven, when Abaye v'Rava say that Psikresha is like Mischaven, that's only if you benefit from it. If you benefit from it, then Psikresha makes it Mischaven. But if you have no benefit from it, Psikresha doesn't make it Mischaven, and it remains a Dover Shein Mischaven. So according to that, if you go to somebody else's yard, according to that view, and you're pulling out grass, and your intention is for no particular purpose, like if or a little bit, you pull out a little bit, but for food, and you don't have the shear for food, that would be a problem. The chotzi shear is also in a tayrim. Basically, what I want to get to say is that you're not going to be over; it's going to be mutter lekatchila. As far as terrain improvement, it'll be mutter lekatchila because Reb Shimon holds davar shem is chaven is mutter. But according to Taisvis, it becomes the davar shem is chaven b'psikreisha, but the leinichale. And the leinichale is similar to malacha and tzricha legufa. As far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't care. But then even according to Reb Shimon, it's not chayav v'chatas, but it's still lekatchila aser. So again, the Gemara's conclusion is that whether you're pulling out grass, let's say, and you're using it for fuel or for animal food or for your own food, you're not going to be chayiv for terrain improvement because the davar shem is chaven. So either in a marsh, it's totally not terrain improvement, and even in somebody else's field, it's davar shem is chaven, but even though it's a psikreisha, but since it's somebody else's field, so either there, Reb Shimon would hold it's muter lekatchila, even though it's a psikreisha, because the psikreisha you don't care about, or it might only be iser lekatchila, it's called the psikreisha leinichalei, which is similar to malach and tzricha legufa. Hakaisiv shtei isis, if you write 2 letters on Shabbos, bein b'yamina bein b'smoila, with your right or left hand, Bein mishem echad, bein mishtei shemus, whether they're both the same letter or two different letters, and bein mishtei samaniyos, or even if you use two different colors of dye, v'chol lashon in any language, you're chayiv. Rabbi Yosi says, "Laichivu shtei oisius ela misham roishim." Two letters you're chayiv because even if it's not a word, but at least it's markings. Shekach kaisvin al karshi mishkan leida eza ben zugay. They used to mark the boards of the Mishkan to know which one is next to which one. So therefore, since it was in the Mishkan, so even if you do any two markings, you're chayiv. They don't even have to be letters. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Matzinu shem katan mishem gadol." If you write, let's say, a small word, which is part of a big word, you're chayiv. If you intended to write Shimoin, and you wrote shame from the word Shimoin, or shame from the word Mishmuel, or you wrote Noach Minoch, or Adam Midaniel, or God Midgadil, you are chayiv because the word that you wrote was at least a whole word. When it says Bishleim, I understand well that Ayamin lechayiv. You chayiv if you write with your right hand. Mishum derech ksiva b'kach. That's normal. So you chayiv achatas if you do it b'shoigig. Ela smoy lamai. Why are you chayiv if you write with your left hand? Hoin derech ksiva b'kach. That's called kilachar yad. That's a shinui. It should be an only nisur derabanan. Rabbi Yomי beiter yad shanu. He's a lefty. Well, hey, smoil didei kiyom dekul alma. So if he's a lefty, then that becomes his major hand, and he's chayiv on his left. But vasmoili chayiv ayam loyli chayiv. You should be chayiv only for your left, but not for your right. With your right would be considered kilachar yad. Elam rabbayi b'shoylet b'shtei yad. If he's ambidextrous, so if he's ambidextrous, he's chayiv on both hands. Rav Yaakov Barod de Bas Yaakov Amar. He says Homani. The Mishnah goes according to Rabbi Yosi. Damar loy chayiv shtei oisius ela misham roishim. The reason why you're chayiv for writing two letters is because two letters minimally is at least markings, like they did on the Kroshim of the Mishkan. And therefore, if it's all it is markings, then your left hand is just as good to make markings as your right. If you're talking about penmanship, here real handwriting, that you do with your right, not with your left. But if you're talking about markings, your left is just as valid. The Gemara asks, "V'amid the Sefer Rabbi Yosi he reish ulav Rabbi Yosi." Since Rabbi Yosi speaks in the middle of the Mishnah, when he says that the letters are really markings, is mashma the Reisha, which talked about the left hand, was not Rabbi Yosi. No, kula Rabbi Yosi. It's all Rabbi Yosi. And the reason you're chayiv for your left hand is because Rabbi Yosi holds that letters are mere marks, and if they're marks, your left hand is just as valid as your right. I'm going to record this because the next is a big piece and it's all one piece.